Welcome back to another episode of the Sale and Scale Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Dimitri, and my co-host.
Hey, everybody, Jerome Radman.
All right, and today we're super excited to be joined by Faris Halou, a seasoned entrepreneur who's built and sold a successful analytics marketing agency to Dentsu. From starting a small business to managing Fortune 100 clients and scaling engagements to 7 figures for us, has done it all. So now he's going to be helping us work with our agency partners on helping them grow their agencies through education and consulting. So in this episode, we're going to be diving a little bit further into the lessons on scaling, how to stay ahead of trends like AI, and to get some actionable insights and some inspiring stories from his own experiences, to really get some ideas on how to grow your own. So thank you so much for joining us. First off, super excited to have you on. And I know you come with a wealth of knowledge, especially on the scaling and building on how to build this agency in a capacity where you can then actually sell it, leverage it. Now, I think that's a very important thing that a lot of marketing agency owners don't think about at all. They don't think past their day to day of how do I just pay bills. Usually is what most agency owners are thinking about. But our goal today, with your help, is to get the gears turning in some of the agency owners' minds and thinking, how can I go from an employee of my business to selling my business if I ever wanted to? So
thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited about this conversation.
Well, thank you. So tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into the analytics side of the agency, and tell us the backstory on how you built that business and sold it.
Yeah, agency founders come from all walks of life. So I started actually not in marketing, in technical. I was an electrical engineer.
Okay.
That didn't work out really well. Just did not enjoy that type of work. Moved into client-facing type work. And then in 2003, after I had moved to Silicon Valley, unfortunately, I was hit with a very painful layoff. I was a VP at this amazing high-tech startup. We raised at the time $96 million to build voice over IP infrastructure, but then did not have enough sales, ran out of money, company folded. I was let go. So I was looking for a job for 6, 7, 8 weeks, not even one single interview.
Wow.
So I ran into a friend of mine who was thinking of starting a business, and this is 2003, sort of the dawn of the internet. And that's when we decided to let's get into this online thing and see if people will buy. So I was sort of forced into entrepreneurship, but that's our start. It was new to us. It was new to business owners. But it was exciting because you can go to business owners and say, hey, I can get you on top of Google, and you can get, visits and you can get leads. And so it was a lot of learning, a lot of learning on the technical side, how to do it. And also a lot of learnings for me on how to sell to clients and understand how to service a client. But it was a lot of hard work, paid off later, but yeah, it was a pretty difficult, challenging beginning, just like a lot of folks, go through when they start their new business.
Oh yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Well, I mean, the thing is, everybody starts humble, right? Like you got to figure out, how to walk before you can run in your agency. There's a lot of lessons to be learned and this and that, but at the end of the day, I think you come from kind of like that. An operational background, so you understand how to structure things, so you're not the one stuck doing every piece of the pie. So
and I had this is my my 7th venture, and in all the ventures I've had co-founders. So I'm not saying this is the only way to go, but having a co-founder who at the time who complemented me, who is more hands-on, more technical. Get into HTML. We were building websites from HTML at the time. There was no WordPress.
Yeah.
And then figuring out SEO and all the stuff you have to do at the time. And I was focusing more on the sales aspect, on the marketing aspect of the business. So that helped a lot as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think because our goal today is to discuss scaling an agency, right? So being able to scale not only from the sales side, that's one piece of the puzzle, but as you scale with sales, one of our resources that we all learn is that we have finite amount of time as the owners. So this is where things like delegation come into play, building teams, hiring plans, everything else. So tell us a little bit more on kind of what you guys did to get to a point where you can actually scale a lot faster, or how long did it take you to get to that point? Because sometimes it doesn't come right away, of course.
Right.
So tell us a bit more about that side of the venture.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, and we also ventured off and did a couple other businesses, but that first business that we started in 2003, fast forward to 2017, 18, we were in 8 figures at that time. So obviously it didn't happen overnight for us. Despite what you hear on YouTube, scaling does not happen overnight.
No.
Nor you can go from $0 to $100,000 in a month or two. So for agency owners who are maybe just starting out, or they've been there and they're struggling, the struggle is part of the journey. I don't want you to be struggling for 7-8 years. But part of, I think, getting out of that initial, I'm small, I'm working with small clients, I think that mindset of growth, and a quote I always mention by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, he says, life is about growth. You grow or you die. So if you don't have a growth mindset, you're hungry for more business, for bigger clients, for better margins. You want to have a team, and you want to have, process. Like, if you don't have that mindset, for whatever reason, I think you're not going to grow. So that's really foundational in my mind. The second, and I'll mention 3 things. And the second thing is putting the time. So this whole concept of work-life balance, I appreciate it. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I've been married for 37 years with 3 adult kids now, and I do volunteer and do other things. But in certain seasons, I think in our journeys, some seasons are just for us to put in the 70, 80, 90 hours a week to get to that specific milestone where I can hire, I can scale, I can get some more help. Right. But I think growth, if you're serious about growth, 40 hours a week isn't going to cut it. And I can elaborate on this later, but this is sort of a general principle in my mind. And the third thing, you have to be a sponge. You have to be learning all the time. Learning from your own mistakes, from the previous project, from the previous contract, from the previous hire that did not work out, as well as, and probably more importantly, you want to absorb, learn from others, be out there at conferences, talking to people, talking to competitors, talking to vendors, suppliers, people who have built businesses in your domain and in other, sectors. So learning and applying, as Peter Drucker said, the one sustainable advantage you have is that you learn and apply ahead of your competitors. So those 3 things, the mindset, I want to grow, I'm serious about growth, making sure you put the time, and you have in your personal life, in your life in general, you can put the time, and then learning, as we all say, I always say is education and application. So those are 3 things I think were really important for us to understand, to apply, and making sure my co-founder and our early hires, for those of you out there who don't have co-founders, your early hires are going to be like co-founders. You have to be sort of have those traits in my mind.
I think one of the things that you mentioned there, the mindset, is super key, because one of the issues that I see all the time because our model is agency support. So we work with agencies on a daily basis. We see the ins and outs of these agencies. We see where they struggle, and where we see most of the struggle is you got solopreneurs that come from creative backgrounds that honestly don't know the first thing about business, which is perfectly fine, because guess what? We all start kind of in that same boat. And then we go through that hard knocks life, education system, making the mistakes, going through the hard troubles and this and that. But what I really realized is it's a matter of mindset at the beginning. If your thought process is that you want to do all the work all the time, it's really hard to scale as an owner, because there's a difference between working in your agency and owning your agency.
Right.
I
mean, I would go. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You have something to add?
Yeah, I would jump in from, in speaking, as we said, we speak to quite a few business owners and other creatives that have gone into the agency life, and speaking to other business developers. One of the things you can take away is this, like, I think it's, I'm gonna kind of hybrid this, but there's three avenues, there's three highways you travel down. There's the one where you're an entrepreneur and you're a solopreneur, and if you're happy in that lane, stay in that lane, but realize that there is a ceiling. You cannot exceed a certain ceiling. If you want to travel in the road where partnerships and building your business, understand that it's a little bit more demanding, but the payback or the revenue side of it can be much higher, and you have a much bigger chance of growth and sustainability. On that side.
No, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. You have, as a business owner, you have to decide if you want to be a solopreneur or you want to be have a business and have a team and grow. And I think there's a book I read way back then. It's the $1 Million Consultant that says you can get to 7 figures and you can just be a solopreneur. I think those are sort of exceptional cases.
Yeah.
But I think you can learn from that on sell based on value, not hourly, all that good stuff. So there's some good things that you can apply from that book. But I think it's a major decision. I want to be, and I've known some successful agency owners. Good friend of mine here in the Bay Area, Kevin, who I think as well, Dimitri. Like for the longest time, he did not want to have staff and people and processes. He had some subcontractors he was working with, and that worked well for him. Later at one phase, he said, you know what? I want to really now grow. So I think that's really, it's an important decision. It's just me and a couple of contractors who are helping me out, or I want to have a team. I want to have processes. I want to get bigger clients. So yeah, it starts there for sure.
Right.
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, not to even mention. I mean, like you brought up contractors versus in-house team. It's a completely two different directions, but at the same time, like the contractors are a good stepping stone to delegation still. Yeah. So, like, because what I've really realized is like you've got a lot of agency owners that they're scared to let go of the reins of doing.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
And they just want to do everything themselves because they came from a world where they were usually working for somebody else and they were the one charged of the project and this and that. So going from doing to leading is a huge difference. And it's a mindset thing. It's something like, with my background in martial arts, you got to do the reps, time. There's the science of business and there's the art of running a business. And part of it is you have to train. You have to grow these different muscles. One of them is exactly to your point, that concept of delegation. And I think 70% of founders, they come from, you have a strong technical background, whatever that technical background is. It could be accounting. It could be obviously SEO. It could be paid search, whatever the case might be, creative, design, UX. But 70% of them, they have zero background in sales and marketing. So on one hand, you have to grow muscles to help you grow the business, right? Like sales and marketing, also accounting, legal, all that fun stuff, right? But then to your point, as it relates to scale, you have to put processes in place. And I always say this is something all of us should do on a quarterly basis, or maybe on a at least twice a year. Like, am I still doing the same things I was doing 6 months ago, or say a year ago? If we are doing the same things we were doing a year ago, those things are limiting our growth. So in terms of delegating, whether to an agency that can support you, you contract, or you bring it in-house, those are all options. You can start with a contractor. You can start with someone who can offer you fractional support, or eventually you can bring some of the stuff in-house. But if I'm still updating the website,
if I'm still going in there and doing some design work, like you're not out there selling, you're not out there marketing, you're not out there delivering and being, in touch with clients and learning to what other needs they have that you can upsell, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to, I think, look, and one thing I would say is that if you are doing your own accounting, I'm telling you, unless you just started and you don't have any employees, any customers yet, and you just you have a spreadsheet tracking your expenses, that's okay. Once you start to have contractors, clients, you do not spend time sending invoices and paying bills. Trust me, and I have a video on this. It is going to limit your growth. And it's going to get messier, and you'll never have your books in order. So start thinking of delegation, have a process in place, document it, go over this process with people, have them shadow you for a month or two, and then, delegate to them. So then you can work on bigger things and spend more time, to your point, Dimitri, earlier, spend more time on the business, not in the business.
Yeah. So let me jump in right on that. I think that's one of the big takeaways that people, I'm taking away from you. You've co-founded always. You've been on the sales side very heavy, and then you've always made sure that you've got partners who are the technical side. And it's very important that you have that balance in the business where you got your marketing side and your sales side, and you've got your technical deliverables side that you understand the nature of your business, your ops, and all that. But so right away, I'd take away the first piece of advice you're giving somebody is, and if I'm hyperphrasing, is partner with the right people. Make sure that you've got the right from the top down. You're creating your processes and your structures.
Yeah, and whether that partner is a contractor, a company that's bookkeeping or whatever it is, it's regardless of the relationship, it's still a form of partnership of some sort.
Right. I mean, there's sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. So, I mean, my main thing is just the delegation. Like, it's super key and important, especially in the early stages, especially if you're a solopreneur, because your number one job function when you first start off your business is sales. And that, I think that's one of the things that people forget. When you once you go into business for yourself, you're no longer the PPC expert. You're no longer the graphic designer. You are the number one first head honcho salesperson for your company, first and foremost, because none of your other hats matter until you have those sales and that revenue coming into the company.
Absolutely. So, and it's hard. I mean, I didn't talk about this, but after I was laid off and we decided to start a business, I had zero background in sales. So I remember my friend, my co-founder, he had this a CD, CDs were a thing at the time. This set on from this guy, what was his name? Hopkins. Oh my God, I forgot his name now. He was a real estate sales guy, and we didn't have a whole lot of money at the time. So I said, I'm not gonna buy another set of CDs. So I took the sales training on CDs on real estate training, but I took some tips and I applied them, to sales. And I remember the very first day. So for those of you out there, agency owners who are struggling, with sales, it's just like everything else. Remember the first time you learned how to bike or how to drive or how to swim. It wasn't easy. Then it becomes second nature. Then you might actually like it once it's working out for you. So I remember the very first day we said, no, what do we do? I said, okay, we'll go to these restaurants because these owners, they've been taking our money. We go there, we eat all the time. So we went to 5 restaurants and we had 5 meals. And then at the end of every time, because I figured I have to just go and kind of warm things up for, I can't just go and talk to the guy. I've never done any cold calling or any of this stuff. So we'd have a meal. And after, when we go to pay us, I would find the owner and I'd say, hey, do you want to have a website? And they would look at me and what's a website? This is 2003, right? And I let me tell you, we had 5 rejections. I kid you not. 5 rejections that very first day. It was devastating. We went home and almost crying. And then it took us a couple of days to recover. Like, oh my God, is this going to work? And we didn't have, any sales for 6 or 7 weeks, I think. We ended up selling to another restaurant. But I learned from those CDs that every time you have a rejection, document it, and find an answer for it. So when you go next time and someone has the same, question for you, then you know how to answer it. So it's just a muscle. You have to grow, you have to try, you have go at it. And every time we were growing from selling to small businesses to mid-sized businesses to then Fortune 500, like you always have to learn how to sell to maybe a new sector, different client size. So learning sales is something that you have to have. I think you have to focus on as a business owner. And at one point when you're doing better and you have some margins, potentially you can get someone to help you out with sales.
Yep.
But as you said earlier, you have to be the walking billboard. Not obnoxious about it, but you have to be the one. You have to be the one looking for leads all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So because the whole name of the game right now, like our whole goal in this episode is to kind of guide someone through scaling from startup, in the early stages, like, we've already kind of gone through it. You got to learn to delegate. You got to figure out the sales hat, because that's probably your number one hat that you have to be wearing at the beginning. And until you get your, pardon my French, shit in a row, like get all your ducks in a row, get all your shit together. With the sales, you can't do anything really on your own servicing. It doesn't matter how you could be the best Google Ads manager in the world, and it doesn't matter if you can't sell. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely. And there's marketing and sales. So obviously you have to be out there. And now, if you're amazing at content marketing and you can drive traffic to your website and you have packages people can buy online and you don't have to talk to people, maybe
that's different.
But then you still have to talk to people once they sell, once they buy.
Yeah, it's never that easy.
Exactly. But I think like I was working with an entrepreneur who was just laid off and he wanted to start his own business, not in marketing, but these same things apply. And he's never done any sales. He's got the certifications. He's got, great, strong, very solid technical background in IT.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And how do I start the business? How do I get leads? So I said, the best thing you can do is once you figure out what you want to sell and who you want to sell to, you got to be out there networking. And I tell people, go out there, forget about Zoom, forget about online, just find opportunities for you to be out there, that local chamber of commerce, the BNI group, conferences, just be out there and practice your pitch, write it down, practice it. And if you do this a few times a month, trust me, after a couple of months, if you do it diligently, you'll see yourself cruising. You'll enjoy it because people start asking you questions, you follow up. So just finding opportunities to tell the entire world, people around you about what you have done and what you're trying to do. And it's going to be difficult if you've never done it before, but that's how you build that muscle. There's no other way.
Oh, yeah. I can be the first one to attest to that.
Oh yeah.
Dimitri was the one who said to me, when we started working together, he was like, "You got to join a BNI group." And I was just like, I don't talk to people. I'm a technical guy. I'm a creative. Give me all the projects you want. He's like, nope,
you're going to BNI.
And I remember standing up for the first time and I'm literally in a cold sweat. What do I say to these people? And I practiced my pitch and I'd written it down because Dimitri had filled me in what needed to be done. And it didn't matter. I still bombed my first pitch. But I've been in BNI now for some time now. And I'm actually excited now when to get up and talk about my pitch. And every time you do your pitch, you tweak it a little bit, you change it, you learn from the previous.
A muscle.
It's a muscle, and you're constantly, strengthening that muscle. I do, speed networking and conferences, and you're learning a different methodologies of speaking to people. But absolutely,
Yeah. And you also should be listening. I talked about learning, right? Like listening to others, because I used to think, oh my God, these people are born salespeople. They're so good at it, right? And then you learn from them, and there's so many benefits to networking. This is like my number one thing to new founders. And also like networking, networking always brings great results, because you can find your potential next hire. You can potentially find a vendor, a supplier, a partner. You can obviously find your leads, potentially an investor, potentially a semi-retired attorney who can give you $150 an hour instead of, charge you, $300 an hour. So being out there and hearing these objections and going back home, okay, like this is what they told me, right? Like how do I deal with this next time around? So that's just part of it, is being out there and learning, and it becomes fun after a while.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's because business is about relationships.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. The strongest businesses have the strongest relationships.
Absolutely.
With community, with other businesses, other networks, vendors, whatever. And that's always that first piece that every business needs to be able to get involved in your community, make that network, get referral marketing up and running, do networking events. That's the starting point for every single business, especially when you're on a budget for your own marketing and sales. Now, this leads us into the next piece, because we're here talking about scaling. Okay. Networking and referral marketing only goes so far to scaling a business, especially when you can't predict reliably when that next lead's coming in. So this is where I wanted to ask your thoughts on this, Rose. At some point, you have to start investing into systems for lead generation, right? Because you want to be able to start taking your ability to consistently build leads out and to be able to sell and be able to reliably predict your revenues, predict your cash flow and everything else. Referral marketing doesn't do that, right? It gives you the basis to build the credibility, right? And gives you some cash, but it's not going to get you out of what I like to call the feast and famine cycle, right? That sales roller coaster when it comes to us agency owners, especially if you're doing production yourself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your tips into thinking about lead generation for yourself? Now, agencies are a little bit different when we do the marketing. We don't all market the same way that we tell our clients to market, right? But give us some ideas of what do you think are credible ways of setting up lead gen systems for yourself, or at least tell us the importance that you see fit to it and what you guys did for your business.
Yeah, and even now with the startup with Ferris, this venture, I try to practice what I preach, and because I tell founders go out there and network, so I make it a habit to go and network. I think if you're just starting out, or let's say you've been at it for 2-3 years, so you have to look at if you're just starting out, try different things. Do it. SEO. You can do SEO on your own, on your own website. If maybe you can run a small paid ad thing, right? That's a campaign. That's fine. But I think look for ways based, networking at if you have conferences. I used to look for conferences, and I wouldn't pay the whole price for the whole ticket. It's expensive at the time. It was expensive, but we would get either the free ticket to go to the exhibit hall, or pay $100 to go a happy hour. And I would make it a goal. I would say, I want to talk to, depending on the size of the conference, 20 people, 30 people. And it's an actual project for me. Okay. Yeah. What is this? If I'm going to a dentist conference, small regional conference, or local conference. Okay. Learn about that vertical, learn about what kind of issues, what kind of pain points they have, and go say, I want to speak with 20 people. Right. And that's my target for tonight. Right. So finding ways to be in front of people. I didn't do cold calling. So this is one thing. If you give me a lead, just someone makes a small introduction, I'm good with them. A warm lead, I can just with that initial introduction, I'd follow up, I'd call, I'd email, no problem. But we ended up in one phase, we hired a company. I think we paid them at the time $1,200, and they actually guaranteed they would get us appointments, 2 appointments a week. So, so if you if you have zero budget, we had some budget, so we spent it on cold calling. But if we had zero budget, I probably would have had to pick up the phone and start calling people. So, so that they put us in front of people, and we ended up getting maybe a project out of maybe 6 or 7 appointments. So the ROI was actually, on the long run, it worked out well. So we tried, I went to so many different meetings. I went to to a breakfast meeting at 7 a.m. And I don't eat breakfast that early. I'm not like, I'm a morning person, but I want to focus on, like, I hate being out at 7 o'clock in the morning, but I did it every other week. I got leads from that. Networking we talked about. We hired this company that was doing lead generation for us. Mm-hmm. So whatever, I read Guerrilla Marketing, Levinson, classic. Most of it is still relevant, like finding ways where you're not spending a lot of money on marketing. We tried, Yellow Pages were a thing at the time. They were moving to like online Yellow Pages.
Yeah. Yelp was a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's so many things.
When they were so good.
Yeah. Well, I think the main point here is you can transform even networking into a consistent lead gen tool. You just have to systemize it and set goals, targeted goals, and know where you're supposed to go. If you're just going to random places, random events, that's one thing. That's not going to be highly targeted enough to be able to say like, hey, I can consistently get XYZ number of leads. So I know my conversion rate is this percentage normally, so I can reliably estimate my revenue to be this, right? The whole goal for the systemizing your lead gen is just to make sure you can have that consistency, because that's part of the scaling, and making it so something that maybe you don't do anymore over time. You build a sales team or whatever else. So, but the goal is to be able to create replicable results consistently in however you decide to choose to do your lead generation. So that way you can either invest more resources, time, personnel, whatever else, to then be able to scale and get more sales over time. So, I have some great ideas, and I wanted to point it out. And here's the thing that I'm going to tell, especially agency owners today. Okay. You don't have to break the bank on your own marketing. Okay. You really don't. You don't need to spend money on ads. You don't need to create witty, commercials for social media. None of that. If you don't want to. If you want to all you have to do is leverage the power of relationships.
Absolutely.
Perfect example. We've been doing this podcast now for like 6-7 months. Our ROI on the podcast is incredible. And you can quite literally do your own podcast for maybe $100 a month? If that. It's just the only difference you have to understand is you have to decide what you're investing. Are you investing capital to delegate the work, or are you investing sweat equity? Maybe you start with sweat equity, get a system in place, create your SOP, and then delegate it. Get a VA to start helping you, remove certain pieces of the pie out of your hands, so that way you can free up to do more sales or this or that. But there's so many things you can be doing. A podcast is an incredible way, and it knocks two different, literally just knocks out two birds with one stone. One, most agencies are not doing their own marketing. Let's be honest. They're really not marketing themselves or anything else. They always say, what is it? The cobbler's kids don't wear shoes.
Yeah.
Right. But a podcast you can use for lead gen, right? You can have a highly targeted list of people that you're looking to meet and talk to. You typically want to choose a higher ticket item to sell, but you invite them to your podcast. Don't make that first call. Don't make that first engagement with them salesy at all. You want to build rapport. You want to build some sort of credibility with them. Give them something. It's the BNI model. Givers gain. Give them something, and then on the tail end, they're going to be naturally curious. Well, what do you do? Why did you invite me to the podcast? What is it that I can do to help you? And boom, that's where your pitch comes in. That's where you've got now this client with their guard down, could be a good potential client for you. And boom, now you're able to consistently generate leads just because you invited people to your podcast on a monthly basis. Like, it's a perfect example. But the goal here is, we want to guide you through from zero to now getting to a point where you structure everything eventually to sell your agency. So we've already talked about, first off, learning to sell. Second is creating, doing the networking, everything else. Third was starting to create your lead engines, right? So you can consistently sell. Then now the next piece is the delegation portion. So tell us, Ferris, on your side, hiring and staffing. I know there's so many different options on how you can kind of get started, right? But you got to delegate the work, because if you're doing all the work yourself, you're not selling, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think, on the point you mentioned, we have a number of what we call black belt principles. And one of them is for owners, first implement, then seek help. So if you want to hire a salesperson and you haven't learned and haven't figured out sales, how on God's earth are you going to discern if this is the right candidate? And I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking with a $8,000 a month. We hired a senior salesperson who did not deliver one qualified leads in 3 months. We had to ask him to leave. So I'm speaking from pain, from experience. I don't want you to go through. So if you want to hire someone who's going to do project management and you haven't done project management, you won't be able to do that properly. Same thing with every aspect of the business. So part of, I think, what Dimitri here is talking about is do it, have some sort of process checklist, how to guide, and then bring in someone to help you do that so you can focus on bigger things, go to the next bigger client, the next big project. So I think this idea of the concept of getting help these days, I think you as a business owner have so many options. Yeah. So of course you can hire full-time, but let's say you're just P&L doesn't allow you to hire full-time right away. And you don't like to take a lot of risk depending on your personality, what have you. You can get a part-timer, you can get another agency to help you. You can go on any of these platforms these days, on these marketplaces with Fiverr or and get the help that you need. A lot of times it's a very in an economic way. So I would, step number one is you got to do everything yourself. That's understandable. Later, start to set up systems, processes, use software to your advantage. Use any of these, Notion, ClickUp, Basecamp, any of these things where you start to put checklists, even if it's just you. Like when I have a new client, here's how I'm going to onboard a client. You do it the first time after the first project. The second time, it'll be much easier. And then you'll also identify gaps in that first onboarding. When I send a proposal, what do I want to include in the proposal? Like have all that stuff, checklisted, and then have templates, and then start using these so that when you have a part-time contractor or full-time, employee, or you get some specialized help, they can take this process that you've created and they can do it on your behalf. Again, you might have to watch over them, stay close to them for the first time they do it, the second time they do it, especially if they're more junior. The more junior, the more, I think, hand-holding they need. Yeah. But after that initial phase, then you can delegate a whole task to them, and that frees up your time. And then you can, focus on growing the business. So hiring, I think you have a lot of options these days. I would say, depending again on your P&L, on your needs, if see if you can, especially for the full-time hires, see if you can find people who have this founder mentality. They have this, not just the subject matter expertise, but also they share the same values with you.
Entrepreneurial almost a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So those first hires are really, really important. They could make or break the business.
I would agree with you. So, there's a couple pieces into here when it comes to the scaling now that you need to delegate, right? So the need is delegation. Now, like you mentioned, there's so many ways of approaching it. Contracting is a major one that most people like to start on a deal-by-deal basis. There's a lot of people out there that are great contractors. They're always looking for work just like anybody else, but maybe they're not in an agency capacity where they've got big teams or anything else. So they're just, independent contractors, and they're great to have somebody that can be called upon when you need it. Then you've got things like temp agencies, or if you wanted to get some part-timers, things like that. You can always start with that. Sometimes you can get interns from local universities if you can put the right systems in place where they can learn. And then, of course, and this is a shameless plug now, you can reach out to an agency like us that does white label servicing.
Exactly.
There's a lot of things out there that, you might still specialize in one piece of the puzzle in marketing. But let's say you wanted to offer something you don't have available because you don't have the expertise or the teams. And you can white label turnkey services as well, or white label certain parts of your process out to an agency like this as well, right? But and then again, that's on a deal by deal basis, so it's not breaking your bank on an overhead capacity. So the goal at the beginning is to retain as much of your capital as you can, obviously, but you don't want to incur a lot of overhead, right? And that's where when you start getting enough sales volume, that's when you typically take away from your contractors, you take away from your outsource agencies, and you would start bringing in in-house teams like staff, and you would train them so that you can take control of your margins better. But that's usually not a first step. So hiring somebody full time is a very difficult thing to do in a startup capacity unless you have the capital. So look into these other options as a stepping stone.
Absolutely. And been around the industry for a long time now. And, I remember a good friend of mine, Rob, he's in the SEO. He and his co-founder, Roxanne, up at NYC. And I remember we hired them to do SEO for us, for our clients. It was called Submit Today. This is when you submitted pages to Google. This is 2003, 2004. Oh, wow. And, $97. And, so we're still friends till now. If they're in the Bay Area, they visit. If I'm on the East Coast, we visit. I send them leads. They send me leads. But I remember one time we were pitching a Fortune 500 here in Silicon Valley. And by that time we had focused our effort on analytics. We specialized. We pivoted and just focused on analytics. And this one client, I knew the director of marketing, and she said, my VP doesn't like to hire a lot of agencies. Just one agency that sort of turnkey, they do everything for them, SEO, PPC. And we would have not had the opportunity to come in and win that business if we just came in. I mean, by that time, we were one of the top Google Analytics partners, like globally. Big brands, all case studies, all that good stuff listed on the Google partners page. So I remember with Rob and Roxanne at the time, and they flew in and we pitched together as an one agency, to your point. And Rob is a master at SEO, and we talked about analytics. So for business owners, with that growth mindset that we've been talking about, you want to be set on your vision, but be very flexible in how you get there. And I think Jeff Bezos talked about that. And don't think of, like, I used to oh, these are competitors, or I don't want to, they'll take my business. Man, life is too short, first of all. Second of all, the pie is pretty huge. And second of all, find people who are trustworthy, people who are competent, who are nice. And then you and them can figure out so many ways to make, close that next deal. Like, there's just so many options. White labeling, partnering, finding someone who hates sales and maybe you're good at it. Someone who doesn't want to touch, coding, but they're very creative. Like, there's so many people out there that they have complementary traits or capabilities. And you want to find ways to package this and go and add value to the customer. So be very open-minded on working with others. Of course, understand, agree on the who's doing what terms. And the scope of work and the terms. Be very clear on that, even if it's your best friend or your family member. But there's just 1 + 1 could equal 3, 4, and 5, as opposed to just doing things on your own. So 100% agree with what you said earlier.
And to your point there, and I think it's funny how you mentioned that, don't be afraid to work with other agencies or who you would normally consider a competitor. That's something we learned real quick. When we started out, we were a retail agency like everybody else, and then we quickly started, because of BNI actually. I was like, oh, I'm really good at SEO, web, and this, right? But I was like, God, I suck at social. At the time. So I was like, okay, who can I find? So I started going through the BNI network, and I found some people that were in social media, and I was like, hey, if I started sending you some referrals for social, would you be able to take care of them, whatever? And then eventually that evolved into, I started white labeling them. I'm like, wait, there's so much money out here in collaboration versus just trying to do everything on your own. Like, what? Not everyone has to be a competitor with you, and these strategic partnerships, they go a long way. They really do.
I'm telling you, I just we help client of ours sell his practice, and just to give people some numbers, amazing margins, 55%. Okay, so if he's bringing in 100K, he's keeping 55K of that, and he was sub-million, but he had 0 employees. He decided, a few years ago, he decided he doesn't want to grow any further. He's good with his recurring revenue. He picks up another client maybe or two every year, but he had a few clients who just loved him, and he has a very dependable, reliable company that he was using for just to do all the work for him, all the copywriting, all the website updates, all that stuff, right? I mean, he knew it. He understand digital marketing, but he decided not to have any employees and outsource all this work to reliable and dependable contractors. And he, we found him a buyer. It was really, everybody's happy. Buyer, seller, great business. And, he was retiring. So you can, I think if you can find reliable people, and there are people, talk to Dimitri here and Jaron, and have them focus on what they're really good at. Mm-hmm. And then you focus on what you're good at. And that could be, again, that's where like 1 + 1 could be 5.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're going through this little journey today together, right? So we started, again, I'm going to recap, started brand new business, put on your sales hat. Then you started trying to create consistency in your sales process by, really systemizing it, creating some lead gen. We've now discussed, okay, you've sold and you've been doing the servicing yourself at the beginning, so you can own the means of production at the beginning. You understand the processes, you control the quality. Now it was time to delegate. Now we gave some pathways for delegation, whether you're subcontracting, hiring a third-party agency, partnering with another company that can just do it, or eventually hiring in your own employees full-time, right? Now we've got the sales sustainable, operations are sustainable. Now let's talk about the structure of this company and where that entrepreneur sits in it. Okay. Now, are we doing the sales still, Ferris?
So at one point, once you've, I like the way you've sort of you're guiding us through the journey.
Yeah.
You as a business owner, you don't just come into entrepreneurship and this agency out of nowhere. Like you have some skill sets, right? Yep. Also a skill set. You have, maybe you're really great at account management, and you're really great at the whole customer relationship. But you figure out sales because you had to, and now you have maybe someone doing sales for you. So I think at one point, and there are a number of inflection points in scaling and in growing, and maybe at that 6 digits, maybe at 150 to 100K, sort of range. Okay, where do I want to put my time? You are still responsible for everything. You're the business owner, right?
This is where I was going. Mm-hmm.
So find things that are like, I had to do accounting and work with my accountant because I had to. I had to work with the lawyer because I had to. I worked with, I became a PPC, whatever it used to be called, like certified, consultant. I had to go and learn all that because I was doing it myself way back then, right? But eventually that's just not me. Like I'm good at certain things. I'm good, got to learn sales and marketing and be out there. And I can follow up on things, but just the technical stuff is not me. So I think finding at one point when you have a bit of margin and you have some processes, finding what you're really good at.
Where you belong in the organization.
And when you're not good at. And then that's where you got to find someone, either a business partner or, like we talked about, hiring, and really focus on what you're going to excel and lead the company and lead your team in those areas. And then have reliable people, again, as we said, in-house early hires or other folks who can just do this part that you're just not good at. And you have to be very honest with yourself I think ask your life partner, your spouse, your good friends who will not sugarcoat this for you. Ask previous clients, talk to your own team members if you have a team, or even your contractors. And if you're honest with yourself, and do this at the beginning of the year, at the end of the quarter, whatever, and just they'll tell you. Like if you were just working for someone else, look at your last performance review. I mean, there's signals that tell you, the world is going to tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
And find people to help with those areas.
And supplement what you're not good at. I 100% agree, because then you're at a point in your business at this stage that you could afford to find yourself a dedicated role that's not every role.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where it becomes really important once you get to that stage of your business, that you start taking yourself away from the many facets of the business and start making sure that you put key people in the right positions to take charge of that. So that way the business is no longer dependent only on you exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a business now that works for you instead of you for the business. Because that's the end goal of being able to scale and to be able to get to a point where, like Faris has been talking about with multiple stories already now, where you can sell your business. The only way you can sell your business is if you can package yourself out. If you are tied to that business in every shape, form, direction, guess what? Nobody's going to want to buy that business from you. Right?
Yeah. I always say, I agree with you 100%. I always say, like, there's always a buyer. There's always a buyer, but
True.
You want to maximize the value, because if everything is in your head and you're doing everything and you don't have systems and processes and you can't delegate, it's going to be an awful valuation, and they probably want you to stick around for you. It'll be like sales, owner finance.
Being an employee.
Exactly. So 100%. So this is where you have systems, and you have people who are employing these systems, and you've shown that you've been able to unplug from many areas of the business, and maybe are focused on the strategic accounts. Or maybe you are, if you happen to be very, very technical, let's say SEO, and you're really into that, right? But at the end of the day, you found maybe a fractional CFO, or maybe a fractional COO, or maybe a company, an agency that's coming on and helping you. But you have to really show, for you to get the best valuation, the optimal valuation, that you have shown growth year over year, ideally both top line and bottom line, and that you have systems and processes, and also potential to
grow,
upsell, to grow. All those factors will give you the most optimal valuation and the most favorable terms.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I mean, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody wants to go through this kind of scaling process. And it's not always to sell the business either. Sometimes you just want to be able to retire and hand off the business as a family business to, someone down the line in your generational, plan. But at the end of the day, you can't do that if the whole business is dependent on you entirely. And that's why the whole purpose of today's podcast was just to kind of bring light to the fact that, as an agency owner, you have a lot of decision making to do when you're building and growing and trying to structure your agency. And a lot of it is really about, first off, educating yourself, talking to people like Faris, because this is what he does. Faris is a kick-ass consultant, and he helps companies scale, grow, and sell. Right? So you want to find people that can educate you on what you need to be doing, because at the end of the day, you're as good as your education in that capacity. And, the things that you don't know about nip you in the butt later on when it's time. And the worst time to try to be figuring all this out is when you are ready to retire, when you are ready to step down. How messy it can be to try to go through your books, clean everything up, try to figure out who's who, what vendors where, writing up SOPs. It's a nightmare if you don't do it from the get-go or early on in the business and really clean your, in my for lack of better words, get your shit together as an agency business owner, and get organized. Honestly, getting organized.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think one of the key things is, we as creatives, we all look up to. I mean, we're all inspired by somebody creative. That's why we create creatives. I mean, we all have somebody likes Dali, somebody likes Picasso, somebody likes this photographer or that. You're inspired by them. And it's the same thing in business. Find those people like Ferris, who can inspire you, who you can learn from, and who can educate you in the right vein. And that's the best advice I could give somebody coming from the creative background, and being on this now creative business journey, but more from the business side. Yeah, I still love doing the creative stuff. Don't get me wrong, I still love rolling up my sleeves and jumping onto a camera, Photoshop and things like that. But to me, it's more important is to get and talk to the client. What are your needs? Strategize. How are you doing? How is your business doing? How can we make it better? And these are things that you learn from just going through the process. Going to, as Ferris was saying earlier, going to those meetings, networking, finding those people who you can learn from.
And setting the mentality, adding the mentality piece to it.
Same mentality as you did when you were watching Bob Ross doing his paintings.
Yeah, no, and thank you for the mention there. And it doesn't have to be me or this person or the other person. One of the black belt principles we have is only take advice from those who have been to where you want to go. So find someone who was in a similar situation like you are, and see what they've done to go to the next level, whether it's getting someone to maybe take on the business and they're in the background, or maybe sell it completely, or they want to work maybe 20 hours a week, and whatever the case might be. Or maybe you want to go into a new market, or maybe you want to cross that $1 million barrier, whatever the next big thing for you. And if selling the business is the next big thing for you, find someone who has done this and they have a track record, and then they can save you. They will save you time and money. Trust me, it's the best ROI. And again, this is not a pitch. I'm not kind of plugging in my services, but there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of great stuff on YouTube, but there's also a lot of junk on YouTube.
Sure.
I mean, I was reading a website yesterday from someone who supposedly, I'm not going to give a lot of specifics because anyhow, but like hundreds, he said they're saying they're making hundreds of $1,000s a month working like a few hours a week. Like, I don't think this is humanly possible. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I looked, this is on their website. There's some fine prints, and they had a case study with like someone going from 0 to 100K or whatever. And then they said in the fine prints, the above results are not typical. I mean, I laughed. I cried. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. And then it says most clients can't get there. So okay. So back to our point is, there are a lot of stuff on YouTube that I think people oversimplify what it takes. I think they're amazing. You don't have to pay a penny, I think, if you find the right resource and learn from them. But if you want to expedite your the journey you're on, if you want to expedite and do get to where you want to go with less resources, with less gray hair, with one less ulcer, I don't know. Then just you can't just do it on your own. Yeah, you know, I know you want to move mountains, and I love that spirit in entrepreneurs, and we should have it, but you just can't do it by yourself. And I think sometimes paying for help, getting the right advisor, it's just the ROI is significant.
Advisors, mentors, paid courses. There's so many different resources out there. But it always starts with finding a source of knowledge that is, number one, genuine and real, not just trying to sell you. And number two, that actually has gone through what you're trying to accomplish. So in your case, if your goal is to build your agency so you could sell it, someone like Ferris is a great match, because he's done it. He's been there, done that with multiple businesses. You said you're number 7 right now.
This is the 7th business. Venture. Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, that's what we're always looking for in our entrepreneurship journey, is just kind of knowing where to take our next steps. And that's why I thought this episode of the podcast was super important, especially for agency owners. And in general, it doesn't matter if you're an agency owner or just a general business owner. It's the same principles across the board in scaling a business. And we're in the same journey right now. We're right now in the process of scaling, getting ourselves out of production, all kinds of different pieces. And that's why we bring in people like Ferris to talk to, so we can absorb and learn from him as well. Yeah.
The learning is mutual, trust me.
But we've made our mistakes already. Especially early on.
I've got a few gray hairs.
Here you go. Yeah. And
these are all the mistakes. Yeah, they are. I can count them out.
What they say is good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. It just and one thing you mentioned, Dimitri, and I wanna focus on is, if you are thinking of selling your business or like something really big, you want to go to a new market or add a new service or merge with another agency, like major milestones in your career, remember the 5 P's, prior preparation prevents poor performance. So if you want to sell the business tomorrow, you're 2 years behind already. So you should have started 2 years ago.
Yep.
But the next best thing is to start today.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, again, horror stories. I've been in a number of M&As, myself 3, and then others. I've helped 3 other recently in the last maybe 24 months. And the buyers are business people like you. So if you tell them, hey, I have amazing margins and have these amazing clients, they got to see this stuff. They got to see it in your CRM. They got to see it in your P&L. They got to see it in the testimonials and the case studies. And at the end, it all starts with the buyers, and if they have some financial advisors working with them, part of their due diligence. Before you sign anything, they want to see a compelling story, that there's something, I'm buying something that is worthwhile and something that has potential. Just like in California, when you buy a house, excuse me, there's an asbestos test you have to take, because just the way things are here in California. So the buyer wants to make sure there's no asbestos, make sure they're, or in Florida, that when you buy a car, I don't know if this, make sure that it hasn't gone through a flood, right? Like, is that still a thing in Florida? Right? The car wasn't flooded, right? So the more you have your accounting in order, it will save you so much time. Potentially, it could be a deal breaker. And I know a business owner who's been in business for a long time, 20 years, profitable, good business. They were mixing their personal bank account with their business bank account, one account. It was very efficient, saving on the monthly fee or whatever. So when I was looking at I said, show me your P&L. I don't have P&L. Okay. Show me your monthly. I don't have, it's mixed. So the guy, genuine, he was amazing business, right? But it took a couple of months. It took 2 months to get his paperwork in order. And there's still a bunch of caveats because we couldn't get some of that data. So you had to get an accountant and a bookkeeper to sort of reverse engineer, not making things up. It just, you had to get the stuff. So we were able to show P&L for the previous 2 years and then the P&L for this year, and all lining up properly. With pivot tables. It was very painful for everybody involved, and it delayed the whole sales cycle by 2 months.
Well, so I think that that's a very good point, and that's an issue with a lot of, I think, marketing agencies especially. We're not financial people usually, but there's a couple of things that I will say that I had to quickly learn, especially in what we do on White Label. You got to understand your numbers, your margins, your expenses. You need to be able to break it down on a per client, per deal basis, per year. Understand your numbers, right? If you can understand your numbers, that's a stepping stone to being able to be financially literate enough to being able to actually set realistic goals as well for your business, so you can show that year-over-year growth. You can show that you're actually profitable, right? Because if you don't even know if you're profitable, who's going to want to buy your business?
Yeah, retention.
You can't prove it.
I mean, so this is a very good point, and I always say the same thing as well. You're not doing this for the buyer. You're doing this to make sure you have a solid business. So it is a good business. The stronger the business, the more processes you have. I think we're really emphasizing on this. So when I say processes, what does that mean? In accounting, that means at the end of the month, your bookkeeper does the reconciliation, and then you have a meeting with them within, say, 7 business days, and you review your performance for last month. That's a business process. It's going to cost you, even if you're, I would say, I don't know, half $500,000 in sales, that's it might cost you $1,000 a month to get to pay the accountant to do this for you. But trust me, if you don't do this now, you will regret it when you want to sell, and you are leaving out opportunities to grow. So I would say, from an accounting and a finance perspective, make sure your books are reconciled and the books are closed at the end of every month. And then you sit down with the bookkeeper and then look at the numbers, make sure everything is in the right category, revenue and costs, and then find a fractional CFO or, a service, if someone's working with you, to start looking at financial planning at sort of the different dials. Like, I can maybe do this and increase my margin. I can do that and increase my sales. So if you're spending 10 hours a month sending invoices and collecting and calling customers to collect money, that's a waste of your time and your resources. Pay $1,000 to a bookkeeper to help you get your books in order, and then find a fractional CFO and spend 2 hours a month with them to more sort of plan with the numbers in front of you. That was a major inflection point in a good way for us in one of the businesses, the first business where we brought in someone to take care of our books. And then I had this fractional CFO, Keith. It took us a couple months. It was very painful to get to a place where I'm describing now. But then instead of, I started to spend 0 hours on anything to do with accounting or invoices and any of that. And then I would spend 2 hours a month with Keith that were invaluable. I was paying $250 an hour at the time. It was very expensive at the time. This is over 10 years ago. But it was like the way CFOs look at numbers and they show you like where you can optimize. It's just something that we're just not built to do. That's what they do. That's their skill. Just like we rank people on top of Google, or we get you an amazing cost per acquisition on your paid campaign. They know how to look at the numbers and help you find the right dials and give you visibility and looking at the data in a way that you just don't think about. And that's just a major thing. So that's when we talk about a business process. This is an example how you should be dealing with numbers and accounting and finance.
Well, I'm going to really quickly just do a final recap because we have gone past the hour and I want to be conscious of your time. So throughout this whole beautiful conversation we've talked about, from inception of your business, putting on your sales hat, then you turned it into starting to network and doing the work at the same time. Then you created your lead gen systems. Then you started hiring and delegating, building up the SOPs and sales processes and everything else, and the operations processes. Then you started concreting your own role into the process itself, built yourself a business that's now started to get sustainable, brought in head figures for anything that you're not as good at. And now you've gotten to a point where you've know and you understand your finances. And now you could sell, keep the business, you can step out of the business should you want to, etc. The world is open to you and you have a good, successful business that's actually working for you and you not for it. Now, this was a beautiful kind of journey, and hopefully everybody followed along and understood kind of the different pieces. But now is the final inflection point, so like reflection point. So is there anything that you would want to make sure that the listeners got out of this episode on your end first, as far as like, if you can really drill home one part, what would that be? Beautiful
summary there, Dimitri. Thank you. Really, really nice summary. I would say another principle we use around here is is passion is optional. Sacrifice and skills are not. So you can get your passion through a hobby. You can get to a passion when you have, amazing margins. When you start unplugging, I didn't take big family vacations for several years. Just the number we just, I had a young family with three children when I was laid off, and we had to put everything. And I tapped into my 401k, and I had an amazingly supportive wife at the time, and she's still supporting today in what we do. But you have to take some really hard decisions if you are serious about the growth. If you want to have this amazing exit and have financial independence, there has to be some sacrifice.
Yeah.
So maybe one less hobby, a little bit less Netflix, just there has to be some sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Some things you should not sacrifice. Relationships with, family. If you have aging parents, gotta take care of the parents. If you have young kids, you gotta spend time with the kids. But I think there's ample time where we just are scrolling or just wasting time. Most of us, some of us have to do 3 jobs to survive. I'm there with you. I had to wash dishes. I get it. But at time, I think this concept of making it and making it big without sacrifice is not realistic, is false. So follow your passion to a certain degree, but hold off on some of that passion till you really put in the time, the effort, the resources, and you'll get there. But it just requires a lot of work. That's sorry, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching here then, but it does. That's just part of my journey.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, in all facets in life, you got to put in the time, you got to put in the effort, you got to put in the, where they say life is 90% is showing up, but it's the 10% of muscle that it takes to get you there. So, I'll leave it at that. And I couldn't thank you enough for today's.
Thank you so much.
Guest speaking. I mean, it's so refreshing to hear a lot of the things that we think about, but then to also get a lot of things that are validation, and a couple of things that you threw out there. I was like, oh, that's an interesting point. I should actually go look that up. Thank you for the teachable moment too.
Yeah. Thank you, Faris.
Great work you're doing. I think you're helping other agencies, scale, and this white labeling is brilliant. There wasn't a whole lot of it, when we started, but I think it's, agency owners, again, be open-minded, be flexible in the execution, while focus on your vision. But no, great work you're doing out there.
Thank you, Faris. And we always want to give our guests a moment. We call it the shameless plug as well. So we want to give you a couple of minutes as well to tell us BNI style what it is exactly that you do. I know we've touched on it and we mentioned it as well, but tell us a little bit more about your company, what you do, what value you provide, and then how they can get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm still involved in the analytics space with our company eSense. I'm not involved day to day, but my co-founder is running that business. It's a 7-figure business. We work with mostly, I would say Fortune 1000, very Google certified analytics partners around helping you make better sense of the data. So we have that business. I'm not very involved in, but if you have an agency who's looking for some deep analytics help, let me know. eSense, E-Sense, C-E-N-C Sense. Sorry. E-CENS.com. But where I'm spending most of my time, most of my waking hours, 60, 70 hours a week. I don't know why. My wife thinks I'm nuts. So why are you doing this after all the things you've done? We're producing a lot of great content for entrepreneurs, on our, YouTube channel, Startup with Faris, and Faris is spelled F-E-R-A-S. And you can also check out our website, Startup with Faris, and we have a newsletter you can subscribe to. So yeah, a lot of free content. We do have services you can check out. But yeah, I'd love to hear from folks in the community what sort of challenges they're going through, and hopefully you can check out the content, and if you like it, leave us a comment or share it. We'd appreciate that as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Ferris. We appreciate you coming on. And if anybody is interested in getting in contact with Ferris as well, be sure to let us know. We'll be more than happy to pass along an introduction. And basically just keep on doing what you're doing, Ferris. You're doing great with the content. I know you're sharing some valuable information with business owners out there. So we really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of that knowledge with us and with our listeners. And yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been really. I learned a few things as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well,
I'm glad. Well, we're just stick around after the recording, and thank you to our audience and anyone that's listening. We appreciate you as well if you've gotten to this point, and we hope we really got some good value out of today. And yeah, thanks so much. Tune in next time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. If this has helped you stay ahead of the current, follow us for more insights and share this with someone who you think would find this valuable. Keep making waves.